Today, we're diving into a book that didn't just make waves, it started a tidal wave. We're talking about Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, the book that pretty much single-handedly launched the modern environmental movement. Let's get into it.
So, Rachel Carson starts her book not with facts and figures, but with a story she called A Fable for Tomorrow. And she paints this beautiful picture, a perfect little American town surrounded by farms where foxes barked in the hills and life just seemed right.
But then, things started to go wrong. Really wrong. A strange sickness just settled over everything. Chickens dropped dead, cattle and sheep got sick and died. It was like this shadow of death fell over the whole area, and nobody could figure out why.
You know what the creepiest part was, though? The silence. The morning, which used to be just an explosion of birdsong, robins, doves, jays, was suddenly quiet. The few birds people did see were trembling. They couldn't even fly. It was a spring without a voice.
And here's the gut punch. This wasn't some evil spell or an act of war. In the fable's big twist, Carson reveals the truth. The people had done it to themselves.
So what's going on here? Well, this is where Carson's genius really shines through. That fable? It wasn't really fiction. It was a composite, a chilling mashup of real disasters that were already happening in towns all across the country.
And the culprit? The villain behind this real-life fable? A whole new generation of synthetic pesticides. Carson had a name for them that was just chilling: elixirs of death. Think about it like this. For basically all of human history, nature had its own checks and balances. And then, in just a few decades, we completely flipped the script. We went, as Carson put it, from an age of interaction to a new age of contamination.
And this was the new chemical arsenal. I mean, we're not talking about your garden variety bug spray here. This stuff was on another level. Take Aldrin, a single tablet the size of an aspirin, had enough poison to kill over 400 quail. And this kind of stuff was being sold to people who, as Carson said, were wholly ignorant of their potentials for harm.
So this gets to the very heart of Carson's argument. It wasn't just about birds and bugs anymore. It was about fundamental human rights. She basically said, if we are being forced to live with these poisons, we have a right to know what they are and what they do.
Okay, so how exactly did these chemicals create a silent spring? I mean, what was the actual mechanism at play? Well, the answer lies in the poisoning of the entire food chain.
It all comes down to a concept called bioaccumulation, and it's a pretty scary idea, really. See, these poisons, they don't just wash away. They get stored in the fatty tissues of living things. And as you go up the food chain, from bug to bird to bigger bird, that poison becomes more and more and more concentrated.
The American robin became the perfect, heartbreaking example of this in action. Let me walk you through it. Towns would spray their elm trees with DDT. That poison would get on the leaves. The leaves fall, earthworms eat the leaves, concentrating the DDT in their little bodies. And then a robin comes along, eats a bunch of those worms, and gets a lethal dose. The result? A spring without the robin's song.
And this is the central conflict Carson painted so vividly. On one hand, you have the delicate, intricate beauty of life, right? Like a bird's nest. And on the other, you have the cold, mechanical, indiscriminate force of these chemical threats. The effect was just devastating. I mean, look at Clear Lake, California. They used a pesticide there called DDT, and they put it in the water at what seemed like a super tiny concentration. But because of bioaccumulation, it ended up being 2,000 parts per million in the local grebes. The nesting colonies of these birds went from over 1,000 pairs down to just 30. And this is where the book takes a turn that must have absolutely terrified people back in the 60s. Carson made it crystal clear. This chain of poison didn't stop with the birds. It was coming for us. She completely shattered this idea that our bodies are some kind of fortress, She showed that we absorb these chemicals from our food, our water, the very air we breathe. They get stored in our bodies, just like in the robins. We are not separate from nature. We are a part of it.
And she wasn't just speculating. She laid out the science, piece by piece. She detailed how these chemicals could mess with the energy production inside our cells, how they could damage our genes, just like radiation does, and, this was the big one, how they were linked to cancer in lab animals.
She then pointed to these really disturbing public health trends, like this noticeable jump in deaths from leukemia between 1950 and 1960. And she had to ask the question that no one wanted to ask. What new things in our environment could be causing this?
So when Silent Spring finally came out in 1962, it was like a bomb went off. The chemical industry launched this huge, well-funded attack against her, but at the same time, a powerful new movement was born from the public who read her words.
And despite the vicious campaign to paint her as some hysterical, unscientific woman, her science was just too solid. It held up. Her book led directly to President Kennedy launching an investigation. It led to the creation of the EPA, the ban on DDT, and the Endangered Species Act. The results? Well, they speak for themselves.
What's just incredible, though, and frankly so inspiring, is that she did all of this while fighting a secret battle of her own with the very cancer she was writing about. She passed away just 2 years after the book was published. Her work is this amazing testament to the power of just telling the truth, no matter what it costs you.
But in the end, her book wasn't really about doom and gloom. It was a plea, a powerful call to change our whole mindset, to move away from trying to dominate nature and toward a sense of wonder and humility and respect for this incredibly complex web of life that we're all a part of. And that brings us to the core question she left us with. For all the people who were never asked if they wanted these poisons in their world, she asks, who has the right to decide? And now more than 60 years later, that question is maybe even more urgent than it was back then. Who is deciding for us now?